This is Chapter 12, Health Promotion of the Preschooler and Family. This stage runs approximately 3 to 5 years old, so preschool years may be starting into kindergarten. Odd fact, in California, kindergarten is not required, so I guess we count that as preschool age. Anyway, so 3 to 5-ish, and the big task for these guys is being ready to go to school. And school is a prolonged separation from family, right? So we're going to start with brief separation, which they're able to tolerate, and kind of through this stage get them to longer and longer periods where they're comfortable being separated from the parents so that they are ready when they start school. Language grows amazingly during this age, and they can also start to visualize things mentally, not just say it, but picture it in their mind. And their attention span is growing. It's still not long, but it's growing. And their memory, they're able to memorize. Anybody who's had a child this age, they memorize their favorite book. They memorize the lines to their favorite movie, so they can memorize. So biologically, their growth slows down a lot. They're going to gain about 5 pounds a year and 2.5 to 3 inches per year. Their body systems are starting to be much more mature, much more stable, and they elongate, so they're much more coordinated and just have a much prettier flow to their movements. It's not that off-balance, wobbly, toddly thing anymore. So gross motor, well established. They can walk, they can run, they can climb, they can jump. This age, they can stand on one foot for progressively longer amounts of time. And here he is, standing on one foot. Fine motor skills are really getting better as well, and that eye, hand, and muscle coordination, so they can do drawing. It's no longer just taking a pen and scribbling. They can dress themselves. They enjoy doing artwork and manipulating puzzles and things like that. So here's a boy dressing himself, and you see he can even do those buttons. There's no guarantee they're going to match up perfectly. And here's a picture. The difference, you can see the 3-year-old just has a head with arms and legs coming out, and it looks like antenna, but I'm thinking that's hair. Then you start getting a little bit of body on that 4-year-old, but they have really interesting legs, but they have clothing on, notice. And then by the time we get to a 5-year-old's drawing, we've got fairly anatomically proportioned, correctly proportioned bodies. So psychosocial development. This is Erickson. He says their goal during this age is initiative, and if they don't develop that, they'll develop guilt. And this is that being able to do things on their own, separation from the parents. Right, we said that's what they need to do to be able to be prepared for school. If they don't start stepping out and doing things on their own, they can feel guilty, or if they have the desire to do things that they know they're not supposed to, that can also lead to that guilt, and then they've got to deal with that, find a way to deal with that. Freud says they're beginning to have a superego, and if you remember, that's the conscience. The id wants it now. The ego can delay gratification but still wants it, and the superego starts looking at, is it right or wrong? So very rudimentary, but they're starting to have a sense of certain things are right, certain things are wrong, not just because I want it. And that leads right into that right and wrong. Their understanding is very simple. If I get praised for it, it's right. If I get punished for it, it's wrong. They don't look any deeper into the motives behind that. So cognitive development, this is Piaget, and his ages never quite match the other guys' ages. So he says this is 2 to 7, and then he divides it into 2 stages of 2 to 4, preconceptual, and then 4 to 7, intuitive thought, and we'll save that one really for school-age kids. So he also says, getting ready for school is what this age needs to be doing. And so in that conceptual phase, they're shifting from being entirely egocentric, where all I care about is how it's going to affect me, to having some social awareness. This is where they can start to see how other kids or other people see them. I'm the athletic boy, or I'm the really tall child, I'm the whatever. They start to have a sense of how other people describe them and view them. That's that social awareness. And by having that, they also can consider another person's viewpoint, that I might like this, but you don't. So it's not universal that everyone thinks, I don't know, swinging at the playground is the best thing ever. So they are still, this is a new skill and it's not very good. They're still predominantly egocentric. So continuing on that cognitive development, language just progresses like crazy during this time. And some kids just really love words. They'll try out new words. They sometimes use them wrong, and the parent will say, where in the world did you come up with that word? And it's usually a TV show or something. But sometimes they use it right, sometimes not. And starting to understand cause and effect, that if you do this, that will happen. Concept of time, they're starting to understand it, but it's not very good. So they understand a minute means you have to wait a little while. An hour means you have to wait even longer, but they really can't tell you how long either one is. Magical thinking, very prevalent during this age. They don't understand that if you think it, that won't make it happen. So if I think that my little new sibling is annoying me and I wish she'd go away, and then she goes to the hospital, it's my fault because I wanted her to go away. So this magical thinking is one of the really fun things of this age, but also something we have to make sure they're not feeling guilty because they've thought something. And maybe it's that, I was mad at mommy and then mommy got hurt. So it's something we really need to kind of dig into and make sure they're not feeling guilty. So Kohlberg, this is moral development, right? And Freud, we said this is the beginning of having that ability to have a conscience, to understand right and wrong. And Kohlberg says the same thing. At a very basic level, they're developing moral judgment, but it's based on punishment and obedience. So if you're punished, it's wrong. If you do what you should get rewarded. That's really as deeply as they can understand right and wrong. And they're going to do things to satisfy their own needs. They're going to do what's right because they get what they want when the parent is happy with them. And again, they're still much more egocentric. They're starting to understand others have feelings, but they're much more concerned with their own selves. Their sense of justice and fairness is very concrete. If it gets rewarded, it's right. If it gets punished, it's wrong. And that's as deep as they go. Spiritual development follows right along with that. They're starting to have some knowledge of faith and religion that they've learned from watching others. And with that development of conscience, they also see can understand a spiritual reality that's part of setting that right and wrong. But again, it's at a very superficial level. One of the problems is, just like with magical thinking, also their spiritual understanding. If punishment happens, they may think, if something negative happens, they may think this is punishment from God because they think misdeeds should be punished. So if they did something wrong and then they get in the hospital, they may very likely feel like they deserved it because they know they did something they weren't supposed to. So again, we need to make sure they're not dealing with guilt they shouldn't deal with. Body image. They're starting to be able to see themselves from someone else's perspective, and they're starting to understand what the desirable is. That I wish I was tall like him or her, or I wish I could ride my bike without training wheels like, the athletic child can. So they're starting to do that comparison. So let's make sure they're doing healthy comparisons. They're also aware of racial identity and differences in appearances. So we want to make sure we're not giving them messages where they're developing biases here. They have a very poorly defined understanding of the boundaries of their body, and they are very afraid of things that damage their body. Like if the skin is broken, they're afraid that their insides will leak out, which is part of why Band-Aids are really important at this age. You give them a shot, they're afraid everything inside them can leak out through that hole. So putting a Band-Aid over it is very important. It's not just that they like them. It makes them feel more secure. It also makes them very frightened of a lot of the things we do at the hospital, because things, even if they're not painful, they're afraid of what the consequence of it might be. So reassuring them with that. Sexuality, they are very aware of what their gender. They usually form a strong attachment to the opposite sex parent, but can identify with the same sex parent. So they'll say, I'm a girl like mommy, but yet they develop a strong attachment with the opposite sex parent. This is the age where they're finally becoming modest. Up till now, they run around naked and don't think about it. But along with that awareness of how others see them, they now are starting to develop a sense of modesty. This is an age where they love to play dress up, and, wear mommy's high heels and her pearls or whatever. Sexual exploration is very common at this age. They will do some masturbation, very common. We want to tell them that's not appropriate in public. We don't necessarily want them to, we don't want to give them the idea that, that's a dirty area or that's a bad thing. We just want them to know it's not appropriate in public. They're also likely to ask questions about where do babies come from and things like that. So they're starting to have those questions. So social development, individualization. This is realizing I have no control over you, and frankly, you have no control over me. I can think and do things that are totally separate from you, and this is finally complete. It really took till now for them to understand that completely. They're no longer, at this age, afraid of strangers. I mean, they know who their family is and who's not, but they've gotten past that stranger anxiety, which brings up a whole lot of safety teaching. We need to make sure that they know to not go with strangers who offer them candy or toys or whatever. So they do still need a lot of parental security and guidance, but in a lot of ways, this is no longer the parents watching over them, keeping them safe. It's now teaching them to do things that keep them safe. This is an age where familiar objects, those transitional objects, are really important. So a preschooler in the hospital, we want them to encourage them to bring their favorite blanket, their favorite toy, their favorite whatever from home. And that really brings them a lot of security. And play is we say play is the work of the child. Play is good for kids at any age. But at this age, they really can use that play to work through their fears and anxieties. So giving them toys that have the same medical equipment they're going to have, or letting them draw pictures of what they're going to experience. And then, that can help us to see how anxious they are, or are they totally misinterpreting what's going to happen to them. Language increases greatly at this age. They now are using language to tell what they mean rather than grabbing a parent and pulling them or pointing. So vocabulary increases, and the complexity. They should be speaking in sentences now. Early in the stage, they may use pronouns wrong, but they're using pronouns. They, may say, her is very nice rather than she is very nice. But they understand the use of pronouns. So complexity as well as just vocabulary have increased. And I think that's a good